What if I told you the greatest military mind of the ancient world wasn't Roman or Greek, but African? A general so brilliant that his tactics are still studied in military academies today. Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian commander who outsmarted Rome time and again, left a legacy of unparalleled brilliance. And yet his story remains one of history's most underappreciated. Imagine this: 70,000 Roman soldiers dead in a single day, not from a natural disaster or a plague, but by the hand of one man, Hannibal Barca, the African general who brought Rome to the brink of destruction. How did this genius from Carthage orchestrate Rome's worst defeat in history? And why, despite his astonishing victories, has his name been overshadowed by the likes of Caesar and Alexander? Stay tuned, because this is a story you won't forget. Picture a 9-year-old boy standing before an altar, his small hand resting on its cool surface. Young Hannibal Barca, son of the great Carthaginian general Hamilcar, is swearing an oath that will shape history, to never be a friend of Rome. Born in 247 BC, Hannibal entered a world torn by conflict. The First Punic War between Carthage and Rome had just ended, leaving the defeated Carthaginians bitter. For Hannibal's father, Hamilcar, this loss was personal. He instilled in his son a burning desire to restore Carthage's glory and get revenge against Rome. As Hannibal grew, so did the expectations placed on him. His education was intense and varied. He learned languages like Punic and Greek, which would help him lead his diverse army later. From a young age, Hannibal joined his father on military campaigns. He watched, learned, and developed his tactical skills, seeing how to lead men, understand terrain, and outthink enemies. Carthage's army was different from Rome's. While Rome used citizen soldiers, Carthage had professional soldiers and mercenaries from Africa and Iberia. This mix gave Hannibal a flexible force, with each group bringing unique fighting styles and strengths. After his father died in 229 BC, Hannibal served under his brother-in-law Hasdrubal. As a sub-general, he got his first real taste of command. His big moment came with the siege of Saguntum, a Roman ally. For 8 months, Hannibal led the attack on this fortified city, putting his leadership and strategy to the test. When Saguntum fell, it started the Second Punic War. Rome, angry about the attack, demanded Hannibal's surrender, but the young general wasn't backing down. He had made an oath, and he meant to keep it. Hannibal had shown he was a skilled leader and clever strategist, but his boldest move was still to come. He was about to start a journey that would shock the ancient world and make him famous in history. Hannibal's next move would shock Rome. Imagine 50,000 men and 37 elephants at the foot of the Alps, ready to cross those massive mountains. It was a bold plan that would catch Rome completely off guard. Hannibal's key strategy was surprise. Rome expected an attack from the sea, not through the Alps they thought impossible to cross. Hannibal gambled that showing up unexpectedly would give him a big advantage. The journey was tough from the start. Hannibal's army faced attacks from local tribes near the mountains. But the real challenge began in the Alps. Steep, narrow paths tested everyone. Breathing was hard in the thin air, and icy winds cut through their clothes. Avalanches and falling rocks were always a danger. Getting such a huge army through this terrain was incredibly difficult. They had to plan every step carefully, and food and water were scarce. The elephants, important for scaring the enemy, were especially hard to move along the narrow ledges. As they got near the top, they hit another problem: deep snow from the previous winter. Men and animals struggled through the freezing snow. Many died from the cold or fell to their deaths going down the other side into Italy. The losses were huge. When Hannibal's army finally reached Italy, only about half of the 50,000 men who started were left. Most of the elephants had died too. Even with these losses, Hannibal had done something amazing. He'd crossed the Alps in autumn, which the Romans thought was impossible. Now he was in Italy, ready to attack Rome itself. Scientists have found proof of this incredible journey. They've discovered old horse dung and DNA in the area from Hannibal's time. It's real evidence of one of the most daring military moves in history. Hannibal's Alps crossing shows what humans can do with determination and clever planning. It's up there with the greatest journeys in history, as impressive as Alexander the Great's campaigns. But as Hannibal looked at the rich Italian lands below, he knew crossing the Alps was just the start. The real fight for control was about to begin. Three battles, three crushing defeats, 100,000 Roman soldiers dead. These numbers might seem unbelievable, but they're just the beginning of Hannibal's Italian campaign. What tactics could possibly lead to such overwhelming victories against the most powerful army in the ancient world? Rome was caught off guard when Hannibal descended from the Alps. They had expected an attack from the sea, not an invasion force coming from the mountains. This surprise gave Hannibal a big advantage as he started his campaign in Italy. The first major clash came at the Battle of Trebia. Hannibal, ever the master strategist, used the terrain to his advantage. He positioned his troops behind a river, forcing the Romans to cross in the freezing cold of December. As the Roman soldiers struggled through the icy water, Hannibal's forces struck. The result? A decisive victory for Carthage and the first of many blows to Roman confidence. But Hannibal was just getting started. His next masterstroke came at Lake Trasimene, where he orchestrated one of the largest ambushes in military history. On a foggy morning, he hid his whole army in the hills above a narrow road along the lake. When 15,000 Roman soldiers marched into the trap with nowhere to escape, Hannibal's forces attacked, dealing Rome a crushing blow with minimal losses to his own forces. These victories weren't just about brute force. Hannibal's true genius lay in his ability to manipulate enemy psychology. He knew the Romans relied heavily on traditional battle formations, so he developed tactics to counter them. He exploited their overconfidence, luring them into positions where their strengths became weaknesses. The culmination of Hannibal's tactical brilliance came at the Battle of Cannae. Hannibal deliberately weakened his center, allowing the Romans to push through. But as they did, his stronger wings enveloped the Roman army, surrounding and annihilating them. The Roman losses were catastrophic. Some estimates put the number of dead at 70,000 in a single day. After Cannae, Rome was in a state of panic. Their seemingly invincible legions had been crushed, and Hannibal stood unopposed on Italian soil. The road to the city lay open. Many expected Hannibal to march on Rome itself and end the war, but he didn't. Why? Some historians argue he lacked the resources for a prolonged siege. Others suggest his real aim was to break Rome's alliances, weakening it from within. Hannibal's choice not to attack Rome turned out to be important. The Romans learned from their losses and changed how they fought. They started avoiding big battles, focusing on protecting their allies and strengthening their positions. This led to a long, drawn-out war that tested both sides. But Rome wasn't done yet. As Hannibal continued his campaign in Italy, events were unfolding that would soon turn the tide of war. Hannibal had been a nightmare for Rome, but even nightmares eventually come to an end. After 16 years of terror in Italy, the tables were about to turn in a way Hannibal never saw coming. Rome's resilience proved to be its greatest asset as they changed their approach, wearing down Hannibal's forces instead of fighting head-on. This put enormous pressure on the Carthaginian general, who now faced a battle against time. Maintaining an army in enemy territory for over a decade was no small feat. Hannibal's supplies were dwindling, and his diverse army of mercenaries was becoming harder to keep united. Desertions increased, and reinforcements from Carthage were few and far between. The once unstoppable force was beginning to show cracks, and the dream of conquering Rome seemed to slip further away with each passing day. But the real game changer came in the form of a young Roman general named Scipio Africanus. Instead of trying to defeat Hannibal directly, Scipio took a page from the Carthaginians' own playbook. He launched a bold invasion of North Africa, striking at the heart of Carthage itself. This move forced Hannibal's hand. After years of terrorizing Italy, he received a desperate message from Carthage, calling him back to defend his homeland. It was a bitter pill to swallow, leaving behind the country he had dominated for so long without achieving his ultimate goal. The stage was set for a final, decisive battle. At Zama in 202 BCE, Hannibal faced off against Scipio Africanus. The Roman general had studied Hannibal's tactics carefully and devised counters for each one. With an army of about 50,000 men, Scipio managed to neutralize Hannibal's strategies, including his famous use of war elephants. The battle was fierce, but in the end, Rome emerged victorious. Hannibal's defeat at Zama marked the end of Carthage's power and sealed Rome's dominance in the Mediterranean. For Hannibal, it was a crushing blow, the first major defeat of his illustrious career. After the loss, Hannibal's life changed dramatically. Exiled from Carthage, he wandered from place to place, seeking allies against Rome. He found temporary refuge with King Antiochus III of the Seleucid Empire, but his influence was fading. Rome, ever fearful of Hannibal's potential return to power, pursued him relentlessly. Hannibal's final years were a far cry from his days of glory. Isolated and hunted, he found himself cornered in Bithynia in 183 BCE. Rather than face capture by Roman forces, Hannibal chose to end his life on his own terms. He took poison, denying Rome the satisfaction of parading him through the streets as a defeated enemy. But Hannibal's story doesn't end with his death. His tactical genius and daring strategies would continue to influence military thinking for centuries to come. The double envelopment tactics used at Cannae have been repeatedly studied and used in more modern warfare. Generals like Napoleon and Rommel studied his methods, adapting them to win battles upon battles. But there's an irony here. While Hannibal's strategies are celebrated, his African origins are often overlooked. This oversight reflects a bigger problem in how we view history. Hannibal, one of the greatest generals of all time, came from Africa, yet his story is rarely framed as an African achievement. It's a reminder that there are many more forgotten chapters of African history waiting to be explored. When we take a closer look at these forgotten stories, we get a better picture of our shared past. Hannibal's tale is just one example of how Africa has shaped world history, and there are many more stories waiting to be told. If you enjoyed learning about Hannibal Barca, the greatest African general of all time, hit the like button. Share this video with history lovers, and subscribe for more incredible stories from Africa's past. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a video.